Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we're talking about The Father today.
Yes.
British film, but written and directed by a French playwright, Florian Zeller, based on his own play from around 10 years ago.
Yeah, 2012.
The play was incredibly successful. Got incredible reviews, and I was just reading a thing where someone was saying he's the great playwright of our times and all that kind of thing. So this is the first I've heard of him and of his play. It's been made into this film that's got some 6 Academy Award nominations. It stars Anthony Hopkins as a man in the throes of dementia. His daughter is played by Olivia Colman, her husband by Rufus Sewell, also Olivia Williams and Mark Gatiss and Imogen Poots appear. It's very much based on a play, and you can feel it in the staging and the writing.
Without knowing that it was a play, because I went into the film completely blind, and without knowing anything about it, you think this is a play.
Yeah, absolutely. A real chamber play. It's all set in a flat in London.
Yes, and that's very imaginative, but it's also very theatrical. So, this flat, you're sometimes told, is the father's flat, and sometimes you're told it's the daughter's flat. When those perspectives change, the decor slightly changes as well, almost imperceptibly, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting like a different perspective on the same place, yeah.
Yeah, like you're not pointed to it, but there's a repeated shot of the kitchen, and there has 2 different sets of fittings and fixtures, depending on, what kind of, where you are in the play, I guess. So things seem to change and move around, and I think the film incredibly effectively puts you in the headspace of Anthony Hopkins' character, who has dementia.
Yes.
Because my gran had Alzheimer's for a very long time, longer than most people have. She had it for some 22 years.
Wow.
And died a couple of years ago. And in the kind of confusion that you would see in her and things, you do have no understanding of what her experience of the world is, right? And in here, in this film, because you, as an audience member, don't have problems with memory, what it does is it changes things around in a way that so Anthony Hopkins would be seeing the same decor, but he wouldn't recognise it. And so the film's technique is to change the decor so that you don't recognise it. And in fact, it does that with the actors as well. So Olivia Colman is not Olivia Colman in some scenes. She's played by Olivia Williams. And Anthony Hopkins is incredibly confused by that. It was such a brilliant way of putting you in that headspace. It actually feels like you're being gaslit by people who don't know they're doing it. Like if people are gaslighting you and it's purposeful, they're lying to you, but these people aren't lying to you. So when Anthony Hopkins says you brought in the chicken, or you this, that and the other, which you've seen and you've remembered, you're with him, and then the character says, no, I didn't, what are you talking about? You're with Anthony Hopkins in that, and although as an audience member you know that Olivia Colman, or Olivia Williams as it may be, is not lying to you, what she says does not jive with what your experience is. It's a really, really disturbing place to be at least for the first 20-30 minutes, I thought.
I mean, I think what's lovely about it is that you do have like this intelligent and charming person trying to understand a situation that is becoming outside their own comprehension, because they're forgetting elements in between things, and they're seeing things differently, right? So I think this is what works so well in the film. That sometimes his daughter is played by Olivia Colman, sometimes it's played by Olivia Williams, and then at the end you realize that he's trying to make sense, but he's planting the images of his carers onto the image of
his daughter and son-in-law.
Yeah. So I think that all of that is very beautifully done, and I must say that Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman are absolutely like extraordinary. In it.
I felt, as much as I thought it was effective, I think it dragged, and it would have been better actually, I think, as a short film.
Yes.
And not that short, maybe 30 or 40 minutes, but not a feature. It felt like a really original and expressive examination of dementia from kind of the inside, if you like. But it didn't have enough narrative to to pull it through the whole length. And it's only an hour and a half long. It's not really a long enough film to be saying, I think this needed to be shorter.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I know what you mean. Yeah, because I don't quite like it as a film. Yeah, but I thought the device of having, because I think there's basically 3 incidents that recur and recur and recur, right? The daughter coming in with the chicken, yeah, the eating of the chicken, the conversations about who the people are. There's a few devices that kind of recur and recur and recur, and they're shown from slightly different kind of perspectives, yeah? So you can imagine that as 3 different acts in the play, right?
Sure.
So I thought all of that was interesting. But I also thought it was a kind of a cliché, yeah. So you begin with Anthony Hopkins listening to opera, seemingly a well-to-do man living in a wonderful flat, surrounded by paintings and high culture, and you end up with a baby crying for his mommy, right?
In a care home.
In a care home. And of course, Anthony Hopkins is so brilliant, that it effaces or erases the acknowledgement or the consciousness that this is a bit kind of cliched. I think it's a bit cliched, really. This idea that we all return to childhood in our old age. I'm not sure that's true. But anyway, the actors carry it off very effectively. But I also felt that I didn't understand. I mean, I didn't understand what I was meant to get out of it. Yeah, so you're watching. I suppose what you're meant to get out of it is to experience what getting dementia might feel like.
I think that's part of it, and I've said that's something I really got out of it. I think something else you're meant to get out of it is the feeling of what it's like for the daughter, the stress that she's under, and the kind of feeling of the limits of patience and the stress that it has on her relationship. Or she has a relationship break up and a divorce happen because she is sacrificing so much for her dad, and her husband is sick of it, and her husband actually lashes out at him and makes him cry by slapping him at one point. This 5 years passes between her divorce and the present day, quote unquote, but time is so slippery because his memory is so slippery. He keeps going back to this memorable event of this night where they had chicken and the argument happened. Like, that's when all this kind of happened, I think. That's why it keeps on sort of coming back unannounced. And so I think intellectually you can separate these 2 time periods, but they keep coming back together. But the effect that it has on the daughter is kind of pretty profound. And
well, you see, I'm not sure I agree. I think the film should have been more of a two-hander, right? So, his subjective experience and deterioration should have been matched by the effect that it has on her and her experience of watching this deterioration happen. And I think though the film sometimes shifts to her point of view and her concern for her father, doesn't do it often enough. So it feels that it's very much his experience.
Yeah, it is rooted in his subjectivity. Yeah, I agree. In fact, the one point I can really remember, I suppose there's the end of the film where she's kind of saying goodbye to him when she is going to move to Paris. The one point I can really remember it's shifting to her is when the husband, at this point played by Mark Gatiss, is taunting the dad and saying, how long do you plan on being around here getting on everybody's tits, is the line he keeps saying. And he starts,
that recurs 3 times as well.
And he slaps him to the point of crying. And when she hears her dad crying from the other room, Olivia Colman rushes in, and then the husband is Rufus Sewell. So you've had it's a very direct, sudden shift of perspective from his to hers in that cut. But that's the one time I can remember that happening kind of directly.
Often it's more subtle than that. It is indicated through the change in decor. His subjective experience has one set of chandeliers. Objective reality, partly her perspective, has another set. But
it happens between scenes.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Not in the same scene really.
Yeah.
And it is mostly grounded with him rather than her, as you say.
So as a film, I didn't like it.
Well, you were very worried about seeing it before we even did. You were saying, "Oh God, do we have to watch something so depressing and blah blah blah."
Yes, well, because it is depressing. I mean, I wasn't wrong, right? And often these types of films, I feel you watch them, and all they do is get you depressed without also. I mean, I think a film is not depressing if you're deeply moved, or if you're also enlightened, or just because it's a depressing subject doesn't necessarily mean that the film is itself kind of depressing. But I think this for me it wasn't very far from what I expected, except it has a very poetic screenplay. Yeah, so you can imagine this being incredibly effective as a theater piece, right? But as a film, I didn't think it was really.
No, I agree with that. I was thinking about how it would have come across on stage, and it did feel there's something that you feel would have been that directness.
Yes.
That stage gives you, and well, I suppose it depends on the production, but a kind of bareness. Like, the thing is, this film is sparse in a sense. It has very few actors, and it's mostly reliant on dialogue, but still the sets are lavishly decorated, and it's very important that the way they do. But there is something distancing about the way it's shot and the way it feels.
Yes.
Even though sometimes, I mean, even it's something as simple as the camera getting up very close to Anthony Hopkins' face when he's crying his eyes out. I mean, that did feel quite direct, actually. There are times when I think for me, it got under my skin in that respect. But not enough. Mostly it was an intellectual exercise.
Yes, and I think it got, to me, many basic formal aspects wrong. Like when Anthony Hopkins believes he's a tap dancer, or he used to be a tap dancer, or he says he used to be a tap dancer, and he does his little dance, I would have liked the camera to pull back and let you watch it, and to focus on him doing the dance, right? Whereas, like, his legs get lost between furniture, right? Like, I mean, you do see some of it, but really, I mean, there's no point being made with that.
But he's not a dancer. I mean, the point is that he's not a dancer, and it's about him. It's all in his facial expressions and his attitude, where he's selling himself to the young girl as he sees her.
I would have liked to have seen that, without furniture in front of it. So
move the furniture out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, you're making cinema. The furniture can be moved, right? Yeah. So I think there are basic things like that I thought were not right. I mean, I suppose it's the same on stage, but you can imagine how really it's the actors that make whatever is worth viewing here. And Anthony Hopkins is amazing because he's very emotional, but also he's very sparse in his gestures. Like, even like his eye movements, like sometimes, he'll crumple up, but his eyes will only move twice or something, and it will convey a lot, right? So it's far from being an overwrought performance, which it could so easily have been. I mean, it is, that role is written as a tour de force for an actor, and Hopkins, performs it as an understated, relatively understated, but no less a tour de force for being understated. Whereas I think Olivia Colman is the opposite. Hers is a really underwritten part, but she's so great and so warm, that everything she does is transparent. It's like kind of you're reading feeling in her eyes, really. So I think she brings a lot more to the role than is there, So she's amazing to see.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. Yeah. The husband is a bit simply written as well, I think.
Yes.
So, kind of ultimately, I'm glad I saw the father, because when it was terrifying early on, when you didn't have a handle on what was going on and you couldn't keep yourself steady in the kind of shifting world in which you found him, it was incredibly effective. I think the film really slows down and the disorientation becomes less effective. And I didn't think that it had enough in it to see out even an hour and a half, which is not a long time.
Well, I'm glad I saw it with you, because if you weren't here, I would have tuned out in the first 15 minutes. So.
Yeah, so kind of recommended, or...
Well,
don't not see it, but I don't think it's all that.
I mean, I would recommend that people see it, because I do think that Olivia Colman is so great, and it's also very interesting to see what Anthony Hopkins does with the role. So I think it is watching just for them, you know. But be prepared to not have the best time in the world whilst watching it.
That's for sure. Yeah. Dementia is not always fun.
All right, let's wrap it up here. We are eavesdropping at the movies. Thank you very much for listening, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. I mean, you should fucking pay attention to this film because it's going to be you in about 15 years. So...
Yeah, I know. It's me now. Are you kidding? I know.
You know,
I'll be strapped to a bed in an old folks' home with the nurses slapping me around.
It is interesting, the techniques that you have to use as a filmmaker to convey an experience that you'll never be able to actually convey. You know, so the thing of using different actors to convey the experience of not recognizing someone is really smart and very effective. It's like when they were advertising HD TV on Sky and stuff years ago. They don't do it anymore because everyone's got one now. But what they would do, because you can't advertise HD TV on SD TV, you can't show it. It's not the same. So they would just say, like, this is in slow mo. This has got loads of color, and they'd say, look, your experience is going to be amazing. And of course, that's not HD TV, right? But you have to sell it in this different way to try and convey that the experience is something else. It's like that.
Yes. Though I think for me, you know, the thing is that this is all an imaginative thing. Like, actually, nobody knows what having dementia is
absolutely.
like, right? For the person who experiences it. So it's all an imaginative act of empathy, really. And it could be completely wrong.
It could be. But it tries its damnedest.
Yeah, it's enough to make you afraid.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, they should have turned it into a horror film. It would have been so much better.